Hello, Watem here, and welcome back to small Higurashi When They Cry. Let's continue with mean sunlight and Hinamizawa. Mio-san told me to keep her investigation secret. I have her top secret scrapbooks. They might hold the truth about everything. When I realized that, I got scared all of a sudden. I might end up the same way as Mio-san, because I have her scrapbooks. If it's a conspiracy, I'll be erased. If it's cursed, I'll be cursed. I should burn the scrapbooks. That's the safest thing to do. But Mio-san believed my story. Mio-san listened to me without laughing. It would feel wrong to burn them without taking a look. If it's a conspiracy, I have to expose it. If it's a curse, I have to break it. I shouldn't run away. I should fight. That's right. I decided to fight to seize my happiness. I shouldn't give in to misfortunes. I have to fight. I'm going to get rid of all the things that are trying to ruin my peaceful life. I'm going to read her scrapbooks when I get home. I started walking faster. I was literally less than a minute away from this point. Great job, me. Key things. And that's a picture of maggots. Launch takeout list. ATTN. Attention? Not sure what else it could be. Kuroda Mental Clinic. Hello. To get straight to the point, we can assume that this is an acute case of post-traumatic stress disorder. The patient is subject to tremendous stress because of her parents' sudden divorce and being forced to choose to live with either her mother or her father. Furthermore, the patient firmly believes that she was responsible for her parents' divorce, which further drives her to self-mutilation. The patient's largest shock stems from a sense of betrayal from her own household, which she believed was an absolute safe haven. Henceforth, there is a high possibility that the patient will resort to psychological defense measures to protect her family. For example, she might feel high disdain for any person of the opposite sex who approaches her father. She might feel uncomfortable about having other people in her home. She may also display eccentric behavior in order to keep people away from it. As an example of the latter, there are reported cases of patients unconsciously bringing home garbage. It's highly important that the patient remains in close communication with her father. By deepening the communication between the two of them, it will strengthen their family bond and loosen up her anxiety. Since the patient only shows signs of an acute syndrome in this case, there's a very good chance that she'll recover within 3 months with her father's support and proper medication. However, it's common for a patient who seem to have recovered to have a sudden recurrence, a flashback, even after 10 years. The father is still fairly young. There's still a chance he could remarry. However, seeing an unfamiliar member of the opposite sex through remarriage could trigger a flashback in the patient, which may lead to avoidance behavior or hyper-awareness. Please explain this part thoroughly to the father in order for him to understand the recovery process. Should the father decide to remarry, it's recommended that he should hold off in telling the patient until she reaches the age where she's capable of living independently. Also, the cause of a patient's psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, delusional parasitosis, seems to be its own culture-bound syndrome. The patient blindly believes that leaving her home village will cause a curse, and that this curse was the cause of her parents' divorce. We believe this is a subconscious defense mechanism to reduce her mental trauma by shifting the blame from herself to her village's curse. According to the patient's statement, the culture of her home village is extremely strict and exclusive. The patient believes that there's no way to be saved from the curse other than by going back to the village, as the curse will continue as long as she lives in her current environment. Through this, we see an inclination to schizophrenia, and believe the chances are high that the patient will continue to alter their perceived reality. Schizophrenia, a case where patients' personalities are reduced, causing altered perceptions of reality and delusions. Her delusion about the maggots dwelling in their blood is a perfect example, and is also a cause of her psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior. When a delusion involves psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, it's extremely dangerous. I highly recommend for the father to move back to the village if he's financially capable. Allowing her to live with relatives in the village might also work. If such a strong belief can induce symptoms such as self-mutilation, then there might be other cases similar to this one. Perhaps prior medical files that document similar culture-bound syndromes may be available at a large medical institution in her local area. It will then be possible to provide better and more accurate mental care for the patient by obtaining these case files. This B5-sized letter was with a bunch of memos. The following was on the backside of the letter. 1. Chukoton. 3. Shanghai-style gummoku yakisoba. 1 large fried rice. You know, I forgot what the title of the note was. Now, there was a lot in that. A lot of things in that hit the nail head on. But also, other things... This music's way too cheerful, by the way. Other things from her perspective hit it even closer. Like the whole scratching at her throat thing. We've never actually seen that from someone else's perspective. We've always heard other people talking about it, or seeing them do it. Like, so we saw, quote unquote, saw Rika do it. We heard about Tomitaka-san doing it multiple times, and when Keiichi did it in the first game, it was only after it had switched perspective to Oishi on the other side of the phone. Anyway, moving on. Let's continue. About homing ability and homesickness. If you interpret homing ability in a broad sense, you can say that most animals have a homing ability. It's the same with humans. We like to sleep, rest, and eat at a place where we feel comfortable, namely our homes. Your home is to you what nests are to animals. Therefore, we can say that humans have a homing ability as well. First of all, why do animals need nests? The answer is the same as for humans. Sleeping, resting, and eating are the essential actions for survival. At the same time, those actions leave one defenseless as well, and giving birth or laying eggs. That's why you need a safe area where you can be defenseless. Everybody knows that not having this safe area results in high levels of stress. When you move an animal to a new environment, it naturally becomes stressed. When you force a person to live in a foreign land where they aren't comfortable, they become greatly stressed as well. Everybody also knows that this kind of stress is called homesickness. The Japanese don't know much about homesickness. He defined it as mental weakness and neglected to treat it for a long period of time. However, homesickness has a very long history. In Europe's Middle Ages, people believed that it wasn't a mental, but rather a physical disease. People also believed that out of everyone, the Swiss got the disease the most. The Swiss, you see, were known to be an ethnic group that worked away from home in that era. They lived far away from their homes. There were no telephones at that time, so they couldn't even hear their families' voices for ages and ages. What about the Vikings in Byzantium? The Varangian Guard? I expect that's further than the Swiss. It's easy to imagine that the young Swiss workers got homesick while working in a strange land. These Swiss who got homesick wanted to go home. Really? But they couldn't because of their jobs. The conflict made them weak physically and mentally. Some of them went crazy and tried to escape from their reality by committing suicide or running away. The Swiss at that time were very superstitious. Many folk remedies and occult-like treatments to prevent homesickness went around. Since going home was the only treatment, they must have called it a fatal disease. But it isn't really one, of course. Specifically, homesickness is a sign of the human homing instinct. Your brain desires to go back to your safe area, namely your home. At first, you remember the happy memories of your home, and it urges you to go back home in a natural way. But when reason stops you from achieving your desire, your brain starts sending unnatural signals to your body. As a result, your body gets weak, and that makes it more difficult for you to live in the strange land. In the end, you have to bend reason in order to achieve your desire to go home. So homesickness is born from our homing instincts. And the stronger one's homing instinct is, the stronger their homesickness. Two things I'm wondering, is this in Takano-san's notebook? And why is this not in the notes section? So this must be quite something in this story? The strength of that homing instinct varies from individual to individual, and depends on the environment in which those individuals live. When your home is safe and the environment you live in is dangerous, your homing instincts grow stronger. Bleh. On the other hand, when the environment you live in is safer than your home, your homing instinct becomes very weak. Safety isn't the only element that affects its strength. Cultural aspects affect it too. The many customs demanding families to return home for major events varies with each region. So your birthplace culture also alters the strength of your homing instinct. Amongst those regions, the transcendents of Onagafuchi village were believed to have an excessively strong homing instinct. The people of Onagafuchi forbade their fellows from ever leaving. Many believe this was the effect of the elitism and sense of purity I already mentioned before. People today still strongly believe that Oyashiro-sama puts his curse on you if you break his rule and abandon the village. This superstition can be interpreted as homesickness. If homesickness is directly proportional to one's home instinct, then the exaggerated expression curse signify the strength of that homesickness, and also their homing instinct. I'm just partially reminded of Shion wanting to get back home. Though perhaps slightly different there, because she was mostly doing that to escape school, I think. I can assume that they hated the outside world and created an insular society precisely because of their powerful homing ability. Unfortunately, there is no way to measure the strength of the homing ability that the primitive people of Onagafuchi had. They were so strongly forbidden to leave the village that nobody left long enough to get homesick. However, after the Meiji era, things changed. The sacredness of Onagafuchi dwindled with the efforts of modernization. Many young people started longing for city life, and some people were forced to leave this village to get a job. As a result, villagers started venturing outside the village borders. That was when the transcendents of Onagafuchi realized how strong their homing ability was for the first time. The residents of Hinamizawa got extremely homesick. After a while, people started to call this homesickness the curse of Oyashiro-sama. It became rumored that a person who left the village to get a job in a strange land was cursed, and he went crazy and died, and the people who had left the village started coming back to it, to either it or the nearby town. Their homesickness and their homing ability were very strong because of their culture. It's reasonable to think that these were cultivated by the unique religion in Hinamizawa, namely the cult of Oyashiro-sama. From the moment they were born, they were taught the rules of Oyashiro-sama. They must have felt guilty about leaving the village unconsciously. As a result, they considered their homesickness to be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I'm not sure if their homesickness got stronger because of the rules of Oyashiro-sama, or if they made rules of Oyashiro-sama because their homesickness got stronger. I don't know which came first. I got tired of reading such small print and lay down on the floor on my back. The true identity of the curse of Oyashiro-sama is homesickness? Mio-san believed my story, and she let me read my few scrapbooks. That's why I expected to find something interesting. What it's saying is the answer to all is homesickness, which many doctors told me so many times at counselling. I'm a little upset. The word homesickness can't explain the extraordinary experience I had. I saw Oyashiro-sama come down to me from the bright light in the bathroom. I saw the dusky red nasty maggots come out of my blood vessels. This scrapbook doesn't explain any of that. I don't understand how Mio-san was going to explain the cloud of maggots. Maybe she didn't have any explanation of that to begin with. Was it just a delusion? I flipped through one of the other scrapbooks Mio-san let me borrow, looking for an explanation of the maggots I saw. Then I found it, and that just gave me goosebumps. Oh dear. And if she has multiple of them, maybe they have multiple scrapbooks, maybe they have different points of view. Maybe she gave Shion a specific point of view because that's what she wanted Shion to read. Maybe she gave Keiichi a specific point of view. Maybe she's given Rena a specific point of view. It had the exact title I was looking for. About the maggots and the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Okay, so about the note with the doctor, like mental place. They mentioned how maggots, like, was for delusion and all. The fact that it's written out here specifically, that kind of gives some level of evidence against it. Because Ren wouldn't have heard about specifically maggots. If she had heard about it, then it could make sense that that's how she saw the curse. But to come up with that herself, multiple people, if Mio-san's written about it, multiple people independent, is a bit far. In Meiji, a group of villagers were on their way back to Hinmazawa, and they started discussing a rumor about a weird disease. They said that maggots started crawling out of the wounds of the person who left Hinmazawa, and that the maggots ate the person's body from the inside. The Shinto priest of the Furude shrine at that time explained that the weird disease was a sign of the curse of Oyashiro-sama. According to tradition, the Shinto priest showed the villagers an ancient scroll, and he told them that the story of the maggots had been passed down through the ages. This is what the scroll said. The world where the demons came from must be interpreted as the land of death, and the demons in that land of death had to live their lives while being eaten by maggots. The villagers who were of the demon's blood had nothing to worry about as long as they lived in Hinmazawa under the protection of Oyashiro-sama. But once they left Hinmazawa, abandoning that protection, the maggots that had been sleeping in the blood of the demons would start to awaken, and they'd eat their bodies from the inside out. This maggot disease scared the villagers for a while, and the Ast was trying to provide them protective talismans whenever they had to leave the village on business. This is interesting, as it's similar to the way homesickness was dealt with by the Swiss in the Middle Ages. After the war started, the delusion of the maggot disease faded away, but they remained accustomed to send talismans to families that lived away from Hinamazawa. The talisman had the word maggot on them. But the most interesting part about all of this is that the residents of Hinamazawa didn't know about the maggot disease until rumors began. I thought that their unconscious worship made those people think of homesickness as a curse. So this case of the previously unknown maggot disease directly contradicted the research I had done so far. It's natural to think that the group of people who were all the way back to the village were lost in a mass delusion because they strongly believed in the curse, and that the Shinto priests took advantage of their state of panic to instill a deeper faith in them. But I'm not fully convinced that it was merely coincidence. This mass delusion matched with the story in the old picture scroll. I wonder if it's possible to see maggots in a wound without having prerequisite knowledge when a person is cursed with Oyashiro-sama. I wish Oyashiro-sama would put his curse on someone I could study. I'd love to see those maggots coming out of someone. Oh. I felt as if Mio-san was here and making that request of me. I remember, when she gave me the scrapbooks, she said that I might be the only one who could understand them. I felt good just for a moment, because I found out that maggots weren't a delusion. But at the same time, it destroyed my excuse that it was a delusion. And now, the reason why Takano-san went after Tomitake-san and not Rena is because Rena was safe from maggots from now on. Oyashiro-sama had taught her. Oh. There's no way that she would have had time to write that down while talking to Rena. So obviously it had to have been done in advance. Oh. The maggots weren't a delusion. They were there. All of a sudden, my wrists, elbows, inner thighs, and neck started itching. I felt the urge to cut open a blood vessel, but I quietly held it down. I remembered that Mio-san looked very serious when I talked about the maggots. She must have thought it was creepy, but so did I. While I was crying because nobody believed me, part of me didn't want to believe that my body was filled with those creepy things. I think part of me wanted to believe that it was a delusion. But now I know that it wasn't. It wasn't a delusion. There are some people who had the same experience. Maggots in the demon's blood will awaken when you lose the protection of Oyashiro-sama. In other words, they may not awaken under the protection of Oyashiro-sama. But all the villagers still have maggots in them without knowing it. So it is possible that she saw the talisman and saw that maggot was written on it, and then that led her to think of maggots independently crawling out of her blood. But even then, it still had to be linked to the blood in her body, and then still think it's unlikely for that to have happened in the first place. People with the demon's blood are people who have creepy maggots in their bodies. I tried not to jump to conclusions and flip the pages again, and unconsciously look for something related to maggots. About parasites and control of the host, maggot disease made me think about something. It's possible to say that the extremely strong homesick. Is it possible to say that this extremely strong homesickness of Hinozawa was an infectious disease caused by some kind of parasite? I'm not trying to connect the maggots they saw with parasites. I'm trying to think about the possibility that their culture, their religion, might be associated with an infectious disease. Many infectious diseases are caused unintentionally by parasites. The parasite's host is literally its home. It wants to live within the host's body for as long as it can. The best way to do that is to coexist with the host without the host knowing it. But some parasites try to control their hosts and use him for prosperity. So yeah, like for some, I think it might be, actually I'm not sure, it might be wasp larva, wasps. Parasitic wasps are like the most common thing ever. But they lay their babies in ants from memory, but then breed in cows, and so the way which they get into the cows is by one of the larvae within the ant goes up and then attaches itself to the ant's brainstem, directly controls it at night, I think, makes it walk up a tall blade of grass and then bite onto it, and hang up there, so that cows eat them, accidentally, and so then the parasite can end up in the cow's stomach. Or alternatively, there's another one which wants to be in cats, I think, but also when it's in mice, it affects their brain to make them less scared of cats so that they get eaten. And it also seems like it might be able to be in humans as well, and so that might be a cause of the whole crazy cat lady thing. But yeah, there's a lot of parasitic animals, and particularly parasitic wasps, and like parasitic wasps that specifically parasite parasitic wasps. In any case, moving on. For example, some parasites have the ability to control their host in order to force them to be eaten by a superior host. Another one, it's another parasitic wasp, but it parasites like a burrowing tree. I think it's a beetle, I think. But like it lays its eggs in them, and once pretty much it digs a hole only large enough for the wasps to get out of once they're ready, and then it's left stuck inside the tree till it starves to death. The typical example is the Dicrocoelium dendriticum. It uses snails or ants as intermediate hosts and forces them to move to the upper side of vegetation so that it's easier for a superior host to consume it. It's not so much a superior host necessarily, it's quite often parasites need different hosts for different life cycle stages. One parasite that controls more complicated animals is called Toxoplasma gondii. I think this is one which I was talking about, where it uses mice as intermediate hosts, with the superior host being cats. This parasite makes a mouse lose its fear of cats in order to increase its chance of getting eaten, so the parasite can live within a cat instead. There are parasites that choose hosts at random. The rabies virus is commonly known for that. It lives and breeds in the brain of the host, and moves into the host's saliva through the salivary glands. It makes the host extremely aggressive in order to make it bite things randomly, so that it in turn can move into other hosts through the saliva. That's what rabies does. Many parasites have a similar ability to control hosts to their benefit. Examples I used above are about parasites that move into other hosts to prosper. But I think there must be some kind of parasite that controls its hosts in order to have a comfortable environment in which to live. I want to try to connect this theory to the abnormal homing ability and homesickness of the Yonagafuchi residents. Let's say there's some kind of parasite that exists in Hinamizawa, that lives within all the villagers' bodies. For the parasite, Hinamizawa is the most comfortable environment to live in, so it gives the host a strong homing ability in order to make them stay in Hinamizawa. Furthermore, it causes the host to get homesick whenever they ignore this homing ability and try to leave. Parasites need hosts in which to live. It's convenient for them if their host builds a community in the environment where it feels comfortable. This theory makes it easier for me to explain the mysteries I described earlier. The Transcendents of Yonagafuchi knew about the existence of this parasite. They knew that, as hosts of a parasite, they couldn't live outside of the village. That's why they created a culture and rules that prohibited contact with the outside world. It also explains why people acted so abnormal during the dam conflict. So, the demons that came out of the swamp in the legend of Oyashiro-san can be interpreted as the mass spread of the parasite. The story about the demons attacking the villagers must be a metaphor of the behavior of the infected villagers who are controlled by the parasite. This theory is too crazy. I should have just laughed about it. On that note, I'll end it here. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know any feedback you have in the comments. And until next time, as the plot further thickens, see ya.